Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's CanJS Community Hangout. We're getting started just a little later. We had a couple of technical difficulties, but things are rolling great now. So this is kind of a neat episode, I guess you could call it. We're doing like an international theme. We have Sebastian, who is from Australia. He's going to be doing a presentation for us. And if you don't know Sebastian already, then you should definitely check out his website. It's sebastianporto.com, and he's got a lot of awesome blog posts about CanJS dating back a couple of years. So awesome to have him. And then also after that, we have Nikica. It's going to be doing a presentation on how to build backend services for CanJS. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to you, Sebastian, and I'm going to let you actually kind of introduce yourself and share anything you want to.
All right, thank you, Chris. Okay, so hi everyone. I would like. Sorry.
Sorry, I just said hello back.
Hello everyone. So today I have a presentation that I would like to show you about communication between CAN components. So can you all see my screen? Just want to double check that.
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, excellent. So lately we have been working a lot with components
now
everywhere.
We can't see your screen. Are you using Keynote?
Yes.
So what I would do, don't go full screen. Just go through the slides unless you have animations, because now it's just a big black screen.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I don't have animations. That's fine.
Oh, you do have animations?
No.
Oh, okay, perfect then.
Should be fine. Can you see it now?
Yep, we're good.
Awesome. So as I was saying, these days is all about CAN components. Components everywhere. So before, I was doing a lot of CAN controls and creating views and all that. Right now, pretty much my application is a big control that is just like a router, and then from then on it's all components. So many different nested components. Like, for example, the example that I'm showing here. So what I would like to talk is the communication between these components, specifically between nested components. So I would like to start with the way in, how the parent component communicates with the child component. So the first way, and the way that I use more often, is just binding a model. It looks something like this. Just passing the model that you want from the parent component to a subcomponent with the curly brackets, and it's a very simple way of doing things. The subcomponent can listen to changes on that object, or the subcomponent can just use that object and just use that object in the views. And I think that's the preferred way of doing things, but there are a few others. But that's all good, but many other times you don't have anything to pass. Like, you don't have a model to pass to the subcomponent at all. So, for example, you just want the subcomponent to tell, refresh yourself. And that's all you want. You don't have anything to tell you, any model to give it. So, for example, another way I use often is to add methods, functions to the DOM object into a subcomponent. For example, a refresh function.
Could you explain what you mean by you add it to the DOM element?
Yeah, I'll explain in a second. So, I'm going all right, or I'm going too fast? What do you think?
Oh, no, you're doing good.
You're going perfect.
Oh, now he's gone.
Now he's going. Now he's gone a little too slow.
Going too slow.
So the interesting thing, while he's gone and hopefully coming back to us soon, that I've been thinking about is like, well, first to talk about what I think he's going to say is, yeah, sometimes you might want a parent to control a child, right? Where the way, like tabs, right? Where I have panels inside of tabs. If you've ever seen that tabs panel example, the tabs need to activate and deactivate the child panels. And the way that I do that is to pass the children, when they come alive, when they're inserted into the page, to pass their parent, pass themselves to their parent, so that the parent has an array of all of the child nodes, or a reference to all of them, all of the child component view models, and then can call things directly on the child view models. Hey, Sebastian, welcome back. I was just talking about while you were gone, I was just talking about, like, I think how I've solved the problem that I think you're going to show what your solution is. So continue on.
Yeah, pretty much. I would love this to be a conversation, because I want to hear your thoughts on best practice on doing these things. How should we solve them better? If there are ways CanJS can improve because of this, also awesome. So the way for me of adding functions, methods to the DOM, and just calling those methods.
Screen again?
I'm not sharing the screen. Okay.
Share your screen. You might have to hit that green button again.
Yep. Cool. So when did I stop sharing my screen?
Oh, it seemed like you disconnected for a while. Did you not experience that disconnection?
Oh yeah.
No.
So we're back on slide number 9. That's the last thing we saw.
Yeah. Sorry,
Okay.
I started talking only because I thought your internet had gone out.
Right.
So I thought your internet went out, so I was just trying to fill time until it gets connected.
Yeah. So that's awesome. So how can I be sure that you are actually listening?
We're with you now, though, so just continue on and talk about how you were going to call refresh and that kind of thing.
Okay, so in the subcomponent here, in the inserted event, I'll grab the element of the subcomponent and then just attach a function to that element in the DOM directly. So now my DOM element has a function refresh with, you can pass some arguments and then I would do something. Yep. Still there?
Yeah, we're still here.
Yeah.
Yeah, we give thumbs up when everything's good.
Yeah, but I don't see both things at the same time. I'm looking at the.
Sorry, yeah, we're good.
Yeah. All right. So then in the parent component, let's say that you have a refresh button, right? So that's in the parent component. So you click that refresh button, and then what I do is I grab the element from the subcomponent again. I just call that function, that refresh function, directly on the subcomponent. So that's one way I use often to tell subcomponents to do something. Just refresh yourself, because I don't have any models to bind. So for me, this feels like the right way to do this kind of thing. Just tell a subcomponent to do something, but the setup is a bit ugly at the moment. So I understand that you are working on improving this, right? Or because I thought I saw a presentation Justin the other day that you were saying that there will be a way of calling methods on the.
Yeah, absolutely. We do want to make it so you can add methods directly on CanComponents prototype. Those will be set in browsers that support a register element. Those will be set like on the prototype of each element, and then for browsers that don't support it, we're going to essentially just copy all those methods over, which is going to be a little bit slower for browsers that don't support it, but it shouldn't be, unless you have just tons and tons of methods, it shouldn't be that inefficient. kind
Yeah.
of future-proofing.
So it's pretty much the same idea, right? Just
Yeah. So,
Hmm.
so have you ever looked at what I was talking about earlier? Have you ever looked at that tabs panel example where the tabs has a bunch of panel?
Yeah, I think I did.
So that's kind of the way that, like, I've done it. It's based, like, so I can, if you don't mind, I'll share my screen and just show you what I mean.
Sure.
Let me just pop this.
So you're saying you pass the entire view model back up to the parent?
Yeah. So there's a reason for it, and I'll try to explain it. Let me look first. Let me show you this component. Tabs. Okay. So a tabs panel, which is inside of. Let me show like what the DOM looks like. The HTML for this. So there's a tab and there's a panel in each one. In tabs, whoa, when a mouse, my computer's kind of being jumpy. When a tab panel is clicked on, it kind of works through the tabs to activate and deactivate all the other panels. Right? So panels need to be able to activate and kind of reach out to the panel. Tabs need to be able to talk to the panel's view model. The way that I do this...
What do you mean when you say deactivate?
I'm seeing a black screen right now.
Oh, you're seeing a blank screen?
Yeah.
All of you seen a blank screen?
No, I'm able to see your screen.
Yeah, I can see it in here.
Okay.
Okay, Sebastian, if you go to here, you guys can kind of follow along with.
It's on the can component. Isn't it?
Yeah, Matthew, if you want to like, or I'm almost there, so never mind. I can send in the chat the source code for the example that I'm looking at. So, oh yeah, tied. Oh, you're doing the can component.html. I'm doing the, oh, it's in that example. Yeah, I'm just giving that source for the example. So I'm going through this. What you'll notice at the very top is the template, and the template has a tabs element, or tabs custom element, and it has a panel custom element. And the tabs need to be able to, for example, when a panel, when you click on the LI for a tabs, for each LI for each tabs, it needs to call make active. And make active will activate a given panel, and then it deactivates all of the other panels. Or it says a current panel is active, and then deactivates all the other panels. The technique that I use, and can you see my screen yet, Sebastian?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
you can. Okay, great. So let's talk about your refresh example real quick. Let's say I had two components. Let's just say I had something like parent and child. And when I clicked on parent, let's just say when I clicked on, I had a button right here. And when I did can click, I want it to call refresh child, which is going to call a method on parent refresh child, which we want it to call on the child. Does that make sense so far?
Yes.
Okay, so what I'd want to do, the way that I might do it would be to have can. Now this is there's a negative to this method and there's a positive, and I'll explain the positive and then the negative from my perspective, and I'd love to hear what you think about it. So for parent, its refresh child would look like this. And this is the parent. And the child would look like this. So this was going to be whatever new stuff, and then you would need an events object.
What if the parent is not a component?
Well, that's the negative part. So the
Yeah, it's an interesting way of doing it. The negative I see is that the parent needs to know that the children is going to set a child
Yeah.
property on the scope, which I think
that's not to me any yes, there's a little bit of more complexity, but there's still the parent would need to know. The parent already kind of knows like a little bit about the child. It would need to know more. It needs to know that it's going to set a child property, but already in your example, it needed to know that there was a child element that was going to have a refresh method. That's definitely more. It's definitely better. Your way is definitely like less it needs to know, but let me explain the advantage of this from my perspective. Is
Sure.
Normally we're building everything with view models. And, sorry. Normally we're building everything and unit testing them as view models. And when you do that, then this parent refresh child method, if you had a parent view model and a child view model, it becomes much more unit testable.
Yeah.
Because you can call the refresh. Yeah, I think you guys probably see where I'm going on this. You can call the refresh. I can create an instance of parent view model, an instance of child view model, add it as on the instance's child property, and then I can actually call refresh on the parent and verify that it called refresh on the child correctly. So that's handy for unit testing. What you're doing is, I think, totally legitimate, and that we want to make that work. It doesn't work now, but it will mean it means you have to talk to the DOM to unit test, which might be fine for some people. It might not be. To me, it depends on like what you want the relationship, like how like pure do you want your view models.
Yep, makes total sense.
So that's all I have to. That's what I'll say about that, I guess. So anyway, sorry for the interruption.
That's good. Yeah.
Sebastian had mentioned that like in the future, he thought that this was going to be built in a bit more to CanJS. What would that look like? Like, how would it be implemented as like an actual part of CanJS?
Oh, so you would do that just by you would have your refresh here, and then it's a tricky. So the tricky part though is you can have a refresh on your element. The transition from like I actually don't know how the transition from scope to element would work. So, Sebastian, can you show your code again for how?
Sure.
How is the parent initializing the call on the child? Like I saw how you're exposing that method. Oh, but you're doing it in the events object.
Yeah, I'm doing
okay,
it.
So that will totally work. But what concerns me is how to go from a view model like if you wanted to do the old if you wanted to do can click here, that calls into a view model. How do you get that to call like on an element?
The way I'm doing that now is my scope is a function with the arguments like parent scope and
it does
element.
get element.
So I just use the closure for that.
Why can't
you just use a what?
Like the closure, like that, in the scope you can pass a function.
Yeah.
So one of the arguments of the function is element. So then I just call element.
Yeah, you just use that. Yeah. See, to me, we do that. We do provide that element there, and I mean I use it all the time because it's just like sometimes you can't escape it. I don't know. That's a totally, like, it's more like we put that there because we kind of have to make things possible. Otherwise, it's
like an escape hatch.
It's like an escape hatch, right? But that's what we.
Sorry, Justin. I was going to say that the issue is that you have this way of calling a method on the scope, like can click something, right? But many times, what you want to do on the scope is just not change the scope. You want to just send an event to the outside world, like trigger something, right? So you need the element. Wow, that's the way you need to do it at the moment, right?
Yeah.
Unless,
to me, I think I don't know what the ultimate solution is going to be. It might be that we eventually just add that element to the view model.
So is it possible to, right now when you create a component, you have the JavaScript, like the object that backs the component. Is it possible to grab that from the outside? Because you can do it, like the component dot scope, you are grabbing the scope. But actually what you want is the component object to listen to events on that object. Yeah, I would need to explain that with some code maybe later.
Yeah, I mean there is this boundary breaking that needs to happen between a view model and the component DOM, right? Now we have there's kind of elegant ways to kind of go. What the view does is kind of provide an elegant way to go from the DOM to from the view model to express DOM, but it doesn't allow elegantly the view model to talk to the DOM. Most of that is actually by design, because a view model that talks to the DOM is inherently much, much less unit testable, because then you need DOM elements. But at the same time, there's just certain patterns that are just so much easier with the DOM in mind, right? Using the DOM especially as a what people use the DOM, and I think you're using it for in your example, and is like a parent-child relationships, right? Like how do you have child widgets? Do you really want to be maintaining like the same thing I was doing here, like a relationship always doing this kind of thing, where the DOM already kind of implicitly has that relationship?
Yeah.
Why couldn't you pass, like in your panels example, why couldn't the parent pass panels, a list of panels, to the child, and the child just adds its scope to that list?
It could do it that way. It could pass its own panels to.
That prevents, yeah.
But then, you can't do that like nicely. Like I don't want to make a person. It's about it's about the user. I don't want the user to have to write like panels equals panels.
Right.
Right. I don't want them to have to write that. Now we could make something that implicitly does that. Sebastian I think Alex Osh, I don't know if you've seen him on the GitHub stuff. Like he's made a few issues about this, and one thing he recommended was a way of being more declarative about this relationship, so that somehow you could actually say, like, you know, add, I forgot what his proposal was, but it was something like, you know, I'm not going to do his proposal justice because it was like more elegant in terminology, but it was something like, in effect, it was like add to parent, and then you could give the tag name, like, of your parent that you were looking for. So in this case, the custom element name. So I would want to add parent. I would want to add myself, right? So I would want to add like dot myself or some other part to the parent, and it would essentially do this kind of behavior by default. But then again, the thing, I mean, I go back and forth on this so much. When web components really come, absolutely a parent is going to just want to be able to get some element and call refresh on it, because it's not going to, someone else might build a date slider that doesn't interface with, you know, it's just a date element. Like, there's no data binding interface for it. So you need to do it. I'm all open. I'm very open to all this problem. I don't know what the perfect, like, thing is.
Yeah, because that idea, you have to be careful. Like, if you have, you know, 5 components, 5 subcomponents there, if they all try to add, you know, same things, it's just going to be a mess.
Oh, it would add them. Yeah, sorry, it would add it as like different names. But yeah, you could easily overwrite, or it could add to an array. I forgot what the proposal really was. It was much. He kind of figured it out much better than I'm.
I would do it from the parent. I would have the parent declare what children it has, and then the parent would just have those child scopes.
Yeah, maybe.
All right.
But again, you still have this problem where you want to call a method on an element in the view model of the view model. But actually, so sorry, one other thing that I was thinking is, if you had the methods in here, like, we need to also be able to go from the parent view model to the parent element itself, and that's why I was thinking we just have this .element. So you could almost, if you wanted to refresh element, like, method on the parent, so you could call refresh on the parent, and that would call refresh on the child. You could do something like this. Right, so if we did allow you to put this .element on the view model as kind of like a, hey, well, here's a short circuit for you, for all you people who want to go from view model to the element, you can do this kind of stuff. But once you do this, well, people will obviously just can put this code in here. So I don't know, maybe it's just an impossible thing to keep the view model kind of pure, but the more that it's, you know, elementless, the more unit testable it is. But maybe that's just a dream that is impossible. I don't know. Anyway, sorry, I've talked too much. Please.
That's all very interesting.
Please continue. So yeah, the more thoughts you have about this, the helps a lot.
All right, I'll keep going where I am right now. Okay, so another way of doing things is broadcasting events to child components. Like, I haven't tried to do this in CanJS. For example, in Angular, that's a way of doing things. I don't know if even possible in Can, but you know what I mean. Just say, like, trigger this event, and the subcomponent should catch it. So then I wanna talk about the getting things out of subcomponents. So can you all see my screen, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So, for example, we have two components here, and just getting the child component to send something to the parent. So again, binding a model, that's the best way, if possible. If the parent component just passes a model, then the child component just can, change that model and, just make whatever. But again, that's, for example, like the perfect example of binding a model is like a date picker, like I have a date picker where I have a booking thing here, and I pass the property that I want my date picker to change, and the subcomponent will just go and change that directly, and that works very nicely. But again, there are many other times where we don't have anything to pass. We just want a value back from the component. So triggering events, triggering DOM events specifically. So that's a very common way of doing things, like from the jQuery world, where the subcomponent will just go trigger selected something, and the DOM event will just bubble up, and the parent component has to catch it. So here, for example, in the subcomponent, when we click a link, we get the value we want, and then we just go trigger on selected and the value. And the parent component it just needs to listen to the DOM element and the unselected event and do something. And for example, change something on itself, on its scope. So this way of doing things is well understood. You have lots of control about what you trigger. For example, the subcomponent can just make some transformations and pass, send to the outside world whatever it wants. And the problems I found doing this is the naming of events. You have to be super careful everywhere in your code base that you are using the right naming for the events, that you don't misspell it somewhere. And the other problem I found is that you have to be careful with, for example, when you have many nested components, you might have many components listening to to events that have similar names. So this is a source of saddle bugs. So you have to be careful of naming the events right, or stop propagating the events, in different levels, so they don't go too far into other components. So, make sense so far, all that? Yep. Okay, cool.
Yep.
So another one way that it's possible right now is calling a function on the parent scope. Like the child component, for example, here the child component can directly call an unselected function on the parent. It is possible, but I think that's a bad way of doing things. Like the child component should never know that the parent component has a unselected function at all. Yeah, that's just knowing too much tight coupling that we don't want. Another one, it's
Can you show that example again? Like you were with that.
Okay.
Was that click? Was that was that in the would that be in the template of the client user?
So this on click here, I'm highlighting right now, will be on the client chooser, right?
It would be in the user provided DOM, or would it be part of the template of client's chooser?
So it would be on the template of client chooser,
Okay.
not on the user provided DOM, no, on the template of client chooser.
Okay. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So I guess if the user provides this piece of DOM, then it's fine, right? It's fair to just use it. So then the other way of potentially doing things passing a callback. Now, this seems natural. Like, you will just say to the child component, for example, here list onSelected, and I here have this callback, onSelected callback. And when you do something, you just call this. And this is a very common pattern in, everywhere, jQuery plugins and everywhere. But I haven't found a way of doing this with CAN components yet, which it would be nice to think about being able to do something like this.
What would you propose for how do we differentiate between would you just do it like how would we differentiate between like a normal
something that
attribute versus like when we read functions and actually get the value versus something that should not be the reason why it doesn't work right now is because if we see a function, we're still like, okay, we're gonna call that function and create a compute out of it and cross-bind the property to whatever that value is. What would you propose to like say, no, I actually want the function?
Yeah, well, there are a couple of ways, right? For example, like right now you already have in the scope like something could be like a @ symbol, right? So that has a special meaning. Oh, this @ symbol. So I guess you could have something like that tells, if you give me something, you could have onSelected, and
Justin, would it work now if the function called a function or the function returned a function?
it doesn't. I tried that too. It doesn't work.
I did that yesterday. Then that didn't work either.
I think it's because basically it's can compute read is the reason why can compute read is like very aggressive trying to read functions. So no, the only way to fix the best way of fixing this. Using the @ thing is less than ideal, like something on the scope, because we actually everybody ended up hating that, and we got rid of it for and stash. What's better is more of like a syntax for instead of maybe you pass bars or vertical bars or some kind of like thing to say, hey, don't call this. I don't know what that symbol would be, but if you can propose a symbol or something like that, it's actually relatively easy. This is a quick fix. You just have to pass like can scope when you try to create a compute out of it. You can pass it all these options that configure what to do when you find a function. Right now it's configured to when you find a function, call the function, but you can actually make it so when it finds a function, not call the function. It's a simple option fix. It's more of just we got to figure out the syntax. And Sebastian, you've just left us. Again, if you are hearing my voice and I see your screen, I can't hear you. While he reconnects, he was showing. What was his example that he was showing before of like? It was like calling a parent function, right, or something like that.
The can click.
Yeah.
The callback or before that, where he's passing the callback in.
I can't remember. What was that?
Well, the last example he was shown was the.
But the one before that, the last example was passing the callback. But there was like something else that we.
It was the.
He was
inside of the child.
Right.
Basically, trying to call a a function on the
Yeah,
parent.
but before that, there was a. I remember like. So he had like, okay, so setting a value. He's like, oh, there he is. Hey, Sebastian.
Of which we haven't back.
I'm back.
You're back. So Sebastian, while you were away, I was trying to remember one. I did have a comment on one thing you were talking about. You showed an example where you triggered an event or something like that, and it would set the property. Right? It was listening to an event, and then it would like set a new value between like a parent and child.
Yeah.
One thing you can do, and then I've done this in the past, is you said you might not have, like, one thing you can do is if the parent wants the child to be able to set a value on the parent, you can do like you can do something like child prop equals parent prop, and as long as let me focus on this stuff.
So
and
that's
as long as the parent prop is null, the child can do that.
right. So
Child
that's
can
just
set its own child prop.
the model binding, right?
Yeah, and that will take care of it. Just to let people know, I guess.
Yes, I think that's great. Doing things that way, if you can. Yes.
Okay. Cool. All right. So go ahead.
So what you just show here is like this example, right? Just pass. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
So you just pass the whatever I want my child to change,
and
this could be just one thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So now after callbacks, so one thing that can be used is can event. So for example, how does it work? Like you can tell the child component to use instead of hearing my callback, I'm trying to use on selected. Using can event, I use can selected, and the function I want to call when when the child component triggers this thing. So in the sub component here, for example, when you click a button, the component will just trigger an event on the element with the name selected. Now, it's a bit funny right now because you have to create this event object yourself with the type and the value or whatever properties you want to send back to the outside world, which is not great. It would be just nicer to have like it would be just nicer to do this, to be able to do just simply this.
Why is that not working?
That doesn't work because
Good. Oh no, we lost him. This is Australia, right? It's, those electrons have to travel from very far away.
It would be embarrassing for Australians to have a worse connection than Croatians.
I hate to move past Sebastian because he's actually brought up a lot of really great things. But we are running at almost an hour now, so it might be a good time to move on to Nikica. And then
let's let him get through his, and I'll stop slowing him down. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's been a great discussion though.
Yeah. I'll stop slowing him down though, but we should definitely let him get through when he comes back. Nikica, you want to give us a preview? What are you going to be covering?
Well, I actually changed the title of my presentation a bit. It's not exclusively for CanJS, but it's about properly building an APIs that return proper status codes and negotiate proper content types and stuff like that, so the client can know what exactly is happening on the server. So I think it's gonna be useful for anyone who's building REST APIs and doesn't know like how to handle all these things that frameworks handle for you, but often badly.
Cool, awesome. Yeah, hopefully Sebastian comes back. We can edit this part out.
It's like Wednesday in Australia, so it might take a while.
There he is.
Oh, there we go. Never mind.
There he is.
We can see you again, Sebastian.
I'm sorry, the internet is pretty bad around here.
No worries.
It's not
You
fast
want to go to the world, so.
as nice as over there.
So we can't see your screen though. Just
Okay.
FYI.
Right. So I was just showing the way you can do it with can event. So
Sorry, Sebastian, real quick, did you try putting an array around your value and that didn't work either?
I haven't tried putting an array. No, I can try that.
When you go back, try trigger and then the name of your event and then comma array and then the value inside of there. And then that's the last comment I'll make.
Okay, that's interesting because
jQuery sometimes wants you to do an array around the object, like the events, like data, like the arguments. I don't know, like, so I've had to do that sometimes. I don't know if that's, I don't think you should have to do it, but it's worth a try. Anyways, I'm done.
Okay.
Continue. I'm stop bothering you.
Yeah, no. Okay, that's yeah. I would try that because it would be nice just to have the same API as jQuery does. That you can just do like this, like select it and the value you want, and it would.
Yeah, that should absolutely work.
Yeah, it should just work. Okay, so then in the parent component, you have to put something in the scope then to catch that that event. But the good thing is that, for example, in here it's just called onChosen, and so I'm passing this, and it's almost like a callback. It looks a lot like just on this to that, and I don't know if that's a negative, but I get a lot of stuff like the context of the child element and the element and the event and the value. Finally, I get the value at the end. No, sorry. Right now, I don't get the value. Right now, I have to do event and event value. But hopefully, I should just get the value here at the end. So that's using can event right now. It's not great having to craft the event object at the moment. That should be there soon, and I think that's probably the way forward to send, for me at least, to send events from child components to parent components. Still, the best way is just to bind a model when you can. All right. So, what have worked best for us? So, binding events, both ways. Binding models both ways. That's the best way. If you can do it, that's the best way to do it. Then, to send events to subcomponents, what has worked for us is to just attach methods to the DOM, and just like the refresh example. And to send events to the outside world we have been just triggering DOM events, like normal jQuery events, and having the parent components catch those events as needed. And some possible improvements I see is some streamlined way to attach DOM methods. So we talked about that already. Also, sending events to the outside world. Like maybe there could be a nicer way to trigger events from a subcomponent. So for example, right now in the subcomponent, you have, when you want to trigger an event, you have to do something like this element trigger on selected value. I don't know, maybe CAN component could have something that, you know, just makes this simpler, like less, you know. I don't know what could it be, but something to think about.
Sorry, can you? So you shouldn't need the dollar wrapper, at least, because this element is a jQuery element.
Yeah, but this is the A, right? I don't want the A. I want the. Ah, you're saying that this dot element should be a jQuery element.
Yeah,
just like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
That's
right.
my.
Okay. Yeah. So this way of doing things is good. It would be nice to have, you know, simpler ways of sending things to the outside world. Being able to pass a callback, as we discussed, would be awesome. And having CAN events passing the extra arguments in a simpler way instead of having to wrap to create these, you know, events types yourself. So that's it. That's my presentation.
Oh, awesome! Thank you so much for sharing.
Thanks, Sebastian.
Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us. It's a great list of ways to overcome some edge cases, which we encounter all the time. So thank you. So moving on, we're going to go to Nikica, who's going to teach us about how to build correct backend services. A good REST API, if I understand correctly.
Can you all see my screen? Yeah?
Yep.
Cool. So
yeah, and Sebastian, as I just showed you, feel free to interrupt at any time with any thoughts you have.
Sure.
Okay. So let's move on. Well, building APIs properly, what does that mean? Well, it means handling many different things about HTTP. And HTTP is not an easy protocol. It looks deceptively simple. Like when you're on a website, you're just clicking around, getting like 200s back, or from a framework, you're just handling few like base cases. It looks simple to handle all the things you think you're handling, but once you start digging around and handling edge cases, it stops looking so simple. So, for example, let's see a Rails controller, a standard Rails controller that handles like the 5 most basic verbs. I mean, 3 most basic verbs in 2 combinations. So you have like the usual get posts, the usual get one post, create a new post, update a post, or delete a post. So all of these things like are, as shown here, very, very simple. You just like handle params and try to find a post and just render it. But for example, what happens if you are handling a create post method from the client? You're getting a reward encoded as JSON or as whatever, and you try to save the reward, and something goes wrong, and you render an error message to the client. And what do you tell the client? What's gone wrong? Did he send a erroneous request, maybe malformed content type? What did he do wrong? Or is it a error from your side? I mean, it could be that you're handling his request in a wrong way. Your model could be flawed. So it's not a simple problem. Most people just put 500 here and they call it a day, and they put like a status here and they call it a day, and that's it. They call that an API. So I think that's not an API. You should use proper status codes. You should use all the things HTTP offers you, because then the client can know what's happening on the server without even looking at at the response he got, at the content he got. Most frameworks handle only like a couple of status codes: 200, 401, 404, and 500. That's missing a server error, OK, and unauthorized. And ignore all the other beautiful status codes you have at your disposal, as for example 201 created, which you should definitely respond with if you're creating a resource, or 301 and 307 that the resource has moved. We'll see what that means a bit later, and 406 not acceptable and stuff like that. So I covered this part already. It's hard as it is to decide is it a client or a server error, and it's harder still when you don't know what you can do with HTTP. So another thing most people don't do is they don't negotiate content types. They don't care if you send them a request to respond with an XML or with a JSON document or just basic text. They just respond with whatever they think you need. They just respond with JSON, and they're fine with that. But you should check what the client is sending you. You should check what he requested and what he wants to see. And of course, almost none of APIs, except for maybe, I don't know, GitHub's handles resource locations, meaning that they don't provide you with the location of the resource if it moved, or they don't provide you with the location where you can see the details of the resource and stuff like that. That's, by the way, a proper REST API. So, as I said, HTTP is not easy, meaning that it goes through a lot of state changes to decide what to respond to the client. So this is like a simplified HTTP decision diagram. We can see it in detail. Can you guys see the? I hope you can see this. So as you can
small.
See, small. I'll try to.
Bit. It's not too bad.
Yeah, as you can see, it once the request is initiated, it goes through a lot of decisions on how to respond to the client. And this is like the simplified version. If you go to the protocol definition, you'll see that there are many more edge cases than this. So one solution, and I think a good solution to this, is to implement a protocol as a state machine. That's what Web Machine does built in Erlang, and that's what Liberator does built in Clojure. And there are probably other libraries that do this. There's one in Ruby, I think, and there's also one in Python. It's basically a simplification, because the only thing you need to do to satisfy the protocol definition is to implement the decisions. So you would need to do, looking at this graph, you would need to implement these words here: is content too large? The only thing you need to do is implement a handler that decides is the content too large, and the framework responds with a proper response type. So, and it guides your hand while doing that. It tells you if you forgot something or if you implemented something wrong. So, a couple of user decisions every API should handle, like user meaning a user of the library. They should definitely handle like the decisions, is the method allowed, meaning that do you handle get, or do you handle post, or do you handle anything? Do you handle patch? If somebody sends a patch to your endpoint, what happens? And is media type available, or is the known method that you handle? Is the
Nikica, do you have an example of
I'll move on to the example. So these are like the usual decisions you should implement for your API. So example is in Clojure, but I think it's pretty readable. So for each, you define like a couple of endpoints. For example, we have an API post and API post ID. You can handle like a fall through cases that what happens in each like instance of the problem. So for a resource that handles with only one post, you just say that you just list the available media types, the known content types, the allowed methods, stuff like that, which come with pretty good defaults in the library. And you can also
can you make it bigger, Nikica?
Can you see it?
Or
Is it better?
Yeah.
And the interesting thing here to note is, for example, how do you define these handlers? For example, how do you tell if a resource exists? Let's say you have a post that has like a flag that tells if it has been deleted. For example, you have a table of posts and you have like an attribute, is the post deleted? And you have like for some reason you keep the post for analytics or whatever. And you have like this is deleted flag that tells the post if it has been deleted. So what you can do with this library is you can tell it, does this post exist? And if it exists, it handles the proper status code. And did it exist?
Quick question about that.
Yeah.
For like extended state variables, like I can see get post twice. Does that mean it potentially making 2 round trips to the server, one for exists and one for existed?
No, that's only one. That's only one request, and that each request goes through all these states from the diagram that I've shown here. So it first checks if it exists, and if it doesn't exist, then it falls through to did it exist before. So
yeah, but I'm saying like, can you go back to your code?
Yeah.
Where is the extended? If you're familiar with what I mean by extended state variable in the.
Could you explain on that a bit?
I basically mean like. So exists, right? If I were implementing exists, does it exist? Like without any other context in the entire universe, I would have to like make a request to my database.
Yeah.
I'd do a query to the database, and then the database would tell me if it exists or not.
Yeah.
Then with existed, I would have to do probably the same request query to the database. I'd have to do 2 queries to the database. That way that you don't have to do 2 queries to the database is you get something like extended state, like a little place where you can stick. Like
you can do that. That's basically the all of these like decisions. They each receive one argument called context. So you can store stuff in the contents. For example, this line here is exactly storing post that you found in the exist query to the keyword post. So in the next decision, you can just check if is there a post. If not, let's see.
That's
if
exactly
post,
what I was.
Yeah,
exactly what I was trying to understand.
Yeah. And so it basically falls through all of these decisions, and there are a couple of like special ones. These with an exclamation mark that change the state. So all of these just check if the request is well formed, and these with the exclamation points actually change the state. And there's a handler. Each of these decisions has an associated handler with it. So, for example, you have like an allowed method. For example, let's say you have an available media type decision, and you only need to implement, for example, handle unknown media type function to handle the case when there's no media types that you know of. So each decision has an associated handler, and handler is responsible for returning the proper message or the proper content body. So these are all the handlers. These are all the decisions you can make, but not all of these decisions are needed for a well-formed API. You can just limit yourself, for example, for 10 or 15 most usual ones, and others are like really edge case, and they're probably used only in like very, very strict APIs. And each of these, like as I said, has a handler that handles the decision, and most of them like have a same default built in. So let's just see a quick example of this. So for example, you have I made a basic, like really basic can model that just gets posts from a endpoint. So for example, let's get all posts that are available to us. We see that there are only 2 posts, 31 and 32. And if we try to get post 31, we just get it. But if we, for example, get a post, I don't know, 12, says that it isn't found, but meaning that we don't have anything in the database with an ID 12. But for example, if we try to get the post 19, it'll say that the post used to be there, but now it's gone. And you usually provide a new location of the post, or at least explain why the post is gone and what happened to it. So that's basically it. Are there any questions maybe, or is anything unclear?
No, that was cool. Makes sense.
Yeah, I think one thing I'll say, I mean, I know a lot of people watching this are on the front end side of things. But that said, these same things I've been using for years now to communicate to the back-end teams. Like, so often you'll only get the 5 return codes, and that really doesn't do the trick when you're trying to build good apps that do a lot of things and handle a lot of different situations. So I would push everybody who works on the front end to definitely start pushing your back-end team to implement these different codes. They're very helpful, and they should be put in place. So I think it was a great talk for front-end developers.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to deal with like building an app when you have a well-defined API.
Definitely.
Awesome. One thing, hey Sebastian, if you have like a little bit of time, could you create a issue on CanJS that just kind of like outlines what your talk outlined? Just like, hey, we need a way to do this and this and this between components. And that can be like a good starting point for discussion on potential APIs. Because what I'd really like to do is like, you know, especially if you can say like, you know, here's an example that you kind of gave. Like, I want to be able, like just like basically your talk did, I want to be able to go from the child to the parent and call a method. I want to be able to have a callback. And give as close as you can, just like, okay, I want child has this method and the parent has this method, and I want to be able to call them like this. If you could write that up, that would be a huge help, because then we can start proposing solutions and like probably associated tests, because how you test it is really important to me, and hopefully come up with like a good answers.
Yeah, that sounds like a really good idea. So I will write something, yeah, probably a gist in GitHub with all that.
Awesome. Super long distance high five.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. I really want to go to Australia, because you and it's Alvin, I think is he from Australia too? A Savoy, I think is his GitHub.
Is he? I don't know.
He's a big. He's put in a few issues and pull requests lately, and I think I saw that he was in Australia as well. So I was
really?
like,
okay.
Maybe I need to make a trip out there to visit both of you.
I need to find out, where is he? Okay.
You do a CanJS meetup.
I'll make sure.
Yeah.
Where are you from originally?
Peru.
Peru. Okay.
South
Awesome.
America.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have Manuel. We have a guy from Chile who works for us, and I could tell that your accent sounded kind of similar to his. So I was like, yeah, it's definitely a native Spanish speaker.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're Australian. Yeah.
I went to Lima last year to Machu Picchu. It was amazing.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I love it there.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks for joining us.
Oh, no worries.
One
I enjoy it.
last minute, our developer David, who has his own kind of backend framework, Feathers.js, wanted to make sure that we all knew that his handled most of the status codes that Nikica mentioned. So a little plug for David. Check out Feathers. Okay, I think that's it for us. Cool. Awesome. Thanks again to both the presenters, and especially Sebastian for being a guest presenter. We really appreciate it, and all your blog posts are awesome. Keep it up. We love the community support.
Thank you. All right. Thank you.
Have a great one, guys. Till next
Awesome.
time.
Thanks.
Actually,
Have a good Friday.
Yeah. Have a good one, you guys.